Well, welcome back, folks. This is Vin Zeeland with the Culture Strategy. Today, I have a great guest. Her name is Candace Fitzpatrick. She is the founder and CEO of Core Clarity. Now, Candace, I want to thank you for the opportunity to bring you onto the Culture Strategy. You're at the forefront of what this podcast is all about, and that is helping elevate others through their strengths. And this is an honor and a privilege to have you here and talk about what you do best every day with people and with organizations. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. I love this stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Candace. Wonderful to see your background and your strengths and your designation as the Thought Rocket.
Well, that's a piece of what we've done here at Core Clarity is taking the top 5 talents that people have and showing how they work together. And there are 15 different what we call core drills, and mine happens to be a thought rocket, which means
Awesome.
I think, and then boom, take off.
Take off. That's awesome. So you started this business how long ago?
Started doing the work in 2003. So it's been 20 years now since I took the assessment and just started delving into it. And I incorporated the organization in 2005. So
Okay.
we just celebrated our 18th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. I bet you it's been quite a journey.
It has been a journey, and it is, I wouldn't trade anything that I've gone through for it. I won't say it's always easy. A lot of
Yeah.
people who are consultants know that 2008 probably wasn't their best year.
Yeah.
And we had some bumps in the road, but the beautiful thing about this business is it has always supported itself.
That's great.
So even during that year where we had a little bit of a loss, we made it up in spades the next 3 months of 2009.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. Great.
yeah.
So when you took the Clifton strengths and you realized your strengths, what made you decide to create Core Clarity? What was that driving force?
What was the impetus that made it happen?
Yes.
Well, I will tell you, in my world, I had been working with another organization. I wrote the business plan, I started it, and I ran it for about 10 years. And I'd gotten to a point where the chairman of the board was very happy with where we were. And he was right there. He looked at it, he said, I'm happy with where we are. Let's maintain it. And I didn't realize then because I hadn't taken the assessment, I didn't really know what my talents were. I knew that I wasn't happy with maintenance because I realized now I'm not a maintenance person.
Yeah.
I am one of those people, if you tell me to go out and do something that's impossible to do, I will figure out how to do it and I will go off and I will think. And when I have everything together, I'll take off with it. And if I have enough behind me, if I have enough velocity so that I
Yeah.
can escape, like the Earth's gravitational force, then it just you get into orbit and you just glide. I mean,
Right.
that's what's happened in my career. And when he said, great, we've grown enough, we've got enough people doing everything I want it to do, let's maintain it.
Sure.
And I went from highly engaged to an actively disengaged employee overnight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And didn't know why. My
Yep.
job didn't really change. My compensation didn't change. My title didn't change. But everything about the focus of the organization and what I'd been doing for so long
Sure.
went
The
away.
message changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it did. But not to the external world. Our mission and values and everything were still intact. But I did not realize at the time that that's what was going on for me. And it was actually 5 years into the organization. It was another 5 years before I left.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah.
Wow.
And I've never been so frustrated or almost ill. I mean,
Yeah.
to the point of being physically brought down as
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
during that time.
Yeah.
But I learned so much from it.
Sure.
And it got me back. I went back to school, got my MBA because he told me to stay engaged in the organization
Sure.
in whatever way it took for me to do so.
Okay.
Because if I had left, they wouldn't have been able to accomplish what they did, which was take it in beyond where I had taken it, which was as a non-stock for-profit organization. They wanted to take it into a stock organization, so there was ownership.
Oh, I see.
And I, that wasn't me. That wasn't my mission. That wasn't what I wanted to do with it.
Sure.
And but I didn't know. I didn't know that I was a learner. I didn't know that I was strategic. I didn't know I had a talent called connectedness. I
Yeah.
didn't know that I had a wide bandwidth with my input of information I could take in.
Yeah.
And the woo, going out and finding the new members and bringing them into the organization and sharing all this wonderful stuff that we were doing, that
Yeah.
was, the essence of those five talents.
Oh,
And
wow.
overnight, it went away.
Wow. Wow.
And we don't change.
Yeah.
We don't change that well. But I didn't know why I was so unhappy. I
Sure.
didn't know why. So I
Yeah.
went back to school. The learner was engaged for 2 years. I
Awesome.
graduated, took
Yeah.
the assessment because this was a book that came up on the top of the lists of the ones to buy to further our leadership development
Right.
when we did a leadership project. And I took the assessment, and it was, oh my gosh, this is amazing. In fact, I remember taking the results and I walked into a closet. Instead of coming out of a closet, I walked into a closet and I called my parents because they're the people who'd known me the longest. And I said, hey
Sure.
guys, listen to this. I just took this assessment and I read off my results. And when I finished, there was a pause. My mom said, well, yeah, you've been like that since you were 3. What's the news here? Well, it was news to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm like, this is amazing because
Yeah.
when you go through an MBA program, you take every assessment, it seems like out there,
Sure.
and none of them resonated with me.
Hmm.
But what I found is that this opposite orientation with my thought rocket back here, where I have what I call cross quads,
Right.
I'm part of the tail of the normal curve. I'm
Okay.
part of that 5% that just doesn't fit in with everybody else.
Yeah.
And in the assessment world, if you can describe 95% of the population accurately, then it's good to go.
Sure.
Well, those of us that are in the normal curve take all these other assessments and read them and go, yeah, okay. And we're seeing everybody getting real excited around us about, oh, I'm an ENF, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, and feeling not just left out, but left
Yeah.
behind
Sure.
because I couldn't get excited about those. But
Right.
this one, it took over my entire life.
Yeah.
Then I couldn't do anything other than this.
It's a disruptor,
And
isn't it? In a
oh
good
my
way.
gosh,
In a good way.
in a good way for those people that take the assessment. But
Right.
those who don't take it and think they know what it is, eh, until they've experienced the
Right.
understanding of their own talents, they don't get it.
Yeah. I've had experiences where I've had many, many, many people take the assessment. And it was funny because I had one gentleman, he lived in Utah, or he lives in Utah. No, I'm sorry, he lives in Maine. His business partner lives in Utah, but he lives in Maine, and he told me when he looked at that, he said, I've taken a lot of these. And I said, not one like this. And he said, yeah, I don't see myself that way. And so it's fascinating because being connected to Brandy, I said, this guy doesn't see himself this way. And she said, ask him if he's more like this or more like this, and just go through each one. And I did, and he said, yeah, I guess this is accurate, you know. But it's fascinating to know the numbers that 85% don't know who they really are, and
It's
they
so
don't understand
sad.
they don't understand their strengths. And I found a quote from Peter Drucker who said, we all can only operate from a position of strength, right? um, and if we don't, we're not going to be as successful as we could be, right? I mean, we do have the innate ability and we know there's something there, but we don't have the language or the ability to identify it. So therefore, it's kind of shot in the dark here and there.
Well, he also said famously, do what you do best and outsource the rest. And that has been the mantra at Core Clarity from day one.
Nice.
Let's do what each person does best. And
Yeah.
whatever we need to outsource, let's outsource. Let's get
Yeah.
the people who know how to do it better than anyone else
Right.
and pull them in for that portion if we
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
that's what we try to do.
That's awesome.
But yeah,
Awesome.
it took over my life. I was doing this on the side while I was still working my regular
Mhm.
9 to 5 job
Okay.
and doing it for free. And just, somebody says, hey, I've got this group, will you come out and do this? And I'm like, yeah, sure. What's the date, what's the time, make sure that I can coordinate it.
Yeah.
And I got a call from a woman who was starting, she was going to be the president of a new chapter of an organization for Fort Worth. And she said, would you do this? You spoke to our team at Dallas, but we realized Fort Worth needs its own chapter. There are enough people here. So I'm doing a leadership retreat. Would you come and work with us to help us understand what we do best? And, kind of like you did over there, but in the beginning stages. And I said,
Yeah.
absolutely. What are the dates? And she told me, and I'm like, okay, let me check on the dates and see if that I can do it.
Yeah.
And it happened to be on my birthday. And so I went to my husband. I said, okay, it's on a Friday, but it happens to be my birthday, and then it's off of it was up at Lake Texoma, so
Oh,
it was away from the house and all. And I said, so do you have a problem with me not being here for my birthday? And he said, look, number one, birthdays are not that important to me, which I had no clue, but he didn't think they were as important as I did. And number two, he said, why would you even have to ask to go off and do something that you love more than anything in the world to do?
yeah.
I mean, isn't that the perfect way to spend your birthday? So yes, go and, have fun and, enjoy the weekend and, be there among these people that are going to be learning about this for the first time. I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
how
great.
fun.
So
How fun.
I called her back and I said, yes, the dates work. And I never told them it was my birthday,
Yeah.
but, I said, yes, the dates work. So, we're a go. And she kind of hesitated and there was this stammering. She's like, so, okay, so, yeah, how much is this going to cost us?
Oh.
And I'm like, cost you? She said, yeah, how much do you charge for these services? And I'm like, charge? I
Yeah.
mean, I could not even imagine that people were willing to pay me to do this thing that I love doing.
Sure.
And she said, well, we have a budget for this. And I said, okay. And I had already quit my job. I was in a year-long time where I was still getting paid my normal salary, but I was free to do whatever I wanted to do.
Nice.
And so do stuff like this, no problem. So she said, yeah. I said, well, how much is your budget? And she said $750. And I said, then I guess I charge $750. And
And
that was
therefore,
the
folks, Core
first.
Clarity was born.
I had to come up with a name of the
Yeah.
company. A checking account. I mean, all sorts of things happened just like this. So this was one of those serendipitous things that I would have never, I never saw myself going out, starting another organization and
Sure.
running it again. But I look back and I'm so thankful
That's
for all those
awesome.
serendipitous moments.
How fun. What a connectedness thing.
It
So
was.
cool. So cool.
Mhm.
So one of the things, Candace, that we do is I run through what I call the 7 pillars of culture. So I just call them out for what they are. It's number one, putting people first. So these are kind of points of topic subject, right? And it seems in culture this would be intuitive, but it's really not. So putting people first. Number two is authentic leadership. Number three is open communication. Number four is building trust. Number five is healthy conflict. Six is the adaptability to change. And number seven is organizational resiliency. So any one of those topics that you want to talk about, I'm happy to engage that conversation. But I know that you have quite a product. I've been the beneficiary of reading through your reports. It is fascinating because I went through the Gallup report. My second undergrad was in psychology, finishing up my master's in strategic communication. And then I looked at your information and I went, well, this is strengths, but it's from a different perspective. And it really resonated with me. And it's not like it blew me off my feet. Like I knew this stuff. I teach this, but it's the angle that I come from anyways, right? It's from the inside out rather than the outside in. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to share the likenesses and the differences, because I have on other episodes talked about the Clifton strengths, but you have a similar product, but from a different through a different lens. That's how I'd like to kind of position you're looking at it through a different lens. So talk about that.
Well, when I first took the assessment, I knew that there was more to it than what met the eye in the books that they had at that point. So I'd finished my MBA. I was sitting on the advisory board for SMU's executive MBA program.
Yeah.
And I asked the professor who handles OB for that, hey, why can't we change out one of the assessments you're using in the OB class with the Strengths Finder assessment, which it was known as back then? And he goes, oh, yeah, Gallup, they came in here, they didn't go about it academically, and he trashed it. And I'm like, wait a minute, because I knew how powerful it was. And here this OB professor is just, discounting it completely. And I'm like, wait a minute, John, do you have the book? And he goes, yeah, they gave me the book. And I said, did you take the assessment? He goes, no. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, do me a favor, take the assessment and let me show you what I see in those 5 talents that you're going to get. So he took it and came in and he threw the report at me across this table that I was sitting at. I had an hour-long meeting scheduled, right, at SMU. And he just throws a report. And he goes, yeah, that's me, but I can't teach this. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't teach this? And I'm looking at him from my perspective. He's, a demigod in OB in the world. I mean, he is just one of the top OB specialists in the world, teaching at multiple universities.
Yeah.
And all that came out of my mouth was, what do you mean you can't teach this? And he said, there are more than 33 million potential sets of combinations. You show me how I can teach this and I'll take you seriously. And he turned and left. And I'm looking at my watch going, okay, that was 3 minutes of an hour-long meeting. I have 57 more minutes, here. So I don't have to be back at the office. So, okay, how do I teach this? What do I need to do to teach this? And one of the things I learned in OB classes was how to create a framework. How do you create a model that you can utilize to teach whatever it is that you need to teach?
Sure.
So I started looking at the talents and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to divide these into categories. So I was in the process of dividing them into categories when I found a book that was written. Now, this is 2003 when this is happening. But I found a book written in 2002 called Follow This Path. And it was written out of the Gallup organization. And in that book, they divided the talents into 4 categories. So I thought, well, okay, Gallup did it. I'll accept that, that they've divided these into categories. And so I took those categories on and I looked at them and I said, okay, I have to come up with a model. And the model that I came up with is what we call the core clarity key. And the core clarity key looks like this. Anything above the horizontal line is external. Those are talents that have to do with other people. Anything below the line are internal talents. Those have to do just with the individual.
Sure.
On the right-hand side, it's all about motivation. Externally, how do you motivate others to action, or how do you mobilize the troops, so to speak?
Yeah.
Or internal motivation, how do you motivate yourself? How do you push yourself and get energy and energize yourself to
Yeah.
get tasks done? On the left side, it was harder for me to name the side, but it's about interaction. So external interaction, how do you connect with other people? How do you create? How do you maintain and sustain relationships with other people over time? And those connect talents were specifically that time piece is important. The internal interaction is, okay, what's going on up here? What are
Yeah.
the voices in your head telling you? And if you see the four greens behind me, I got a lot of voices up there.
Yeah.
So how do you gather information? How do you process information? How do you make decisions based on this information you've gathered and the mental images you've created based on this information?
Sure.
And so basically what I noticed was the four categories that they had different names. I had to change the names because the reflect talents were called the thinking talents. And
Mm.
for the 12% of the people that do not have anything in that category, that was a serious problem.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you mean I don't have any thinking talents? Or the rest of the organization's telling the boss, we knew that already. He doesn't think about anything before he takes action. And so I thought, oh, I've got to change that.
Yeah.
So I changed the names. I put colors to them. The colors for me have meaning. Blue, the blue glue, true blue friends, all of that stuff about those connections that people make. On the
Sure.
green, for me, it was like, from a standpoint of growth and green, spring and, all this wonderful stuff that comes out of the reflections that people have.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In Yeah, the energize, well, the orange can go for the carrot that my Tal ant has strapped to his back in front of him so that he pushes himself forward. But it also, for me, symbolizes a flame because it's that internal flame that just burns. And people that have a lot of energized talents, like our friend Chris has three of them,
Yeah.
they get so much done. They
Yeah.
just have so much energy that just permeates out of them.
Sure.
And then the mobilized talents, how do you mobilize others to action? This is the least prevalent of the four categories, but it has so much to do with aspirations, with inspiration. And I have in my history a story about the color magenta that was something that I aspired to because
Okay.
of that color.
Sure.
And so I thought, it goes with the other ones. It looks good.
Right.
That's the color that's going to be.
Yeah.
So, not saying that it's necessarily going to impact everyone that way, but that's where I came up with these colors. And then when you start to look at the talents in their categories, 12 of the 34 reflect talents.
Mm.
9 of them are orange energized talents. 7 of them are connect blue
Mm.
talents, and only 6 of them are mobilize or magenta talents.
Yeah.
And what's interesting when you start to look at these, 49% of the population don't get anything in the mobilized category at all, not
What, say
even
that, say
one.
that percentage one more time.
It's 49% do not get anything in the mobilized category.
That's fascinating. In the top
We
five,
have in their top 5.
in their top
Correct.
five,
They
49%.
might have it. Yeah, they might
Almost,
have
that's
it at
almost half
6,
the
to be honest.
population.
I know.
Wow.
I
See,
know.
now I'm in my top five, which you probably have memorized already. In
Oh,
my
well,
in
let's look at it.
Oh, we didn't plan this out, honestly. But connectedness, input learner, ideation, and communication.
Yep.
And so I'm high green, just like you, in that So now connectedness in the Gallup. So let's make a distinction here, because connectedness in Gallup is a blue. So they call that relational. So what makes connectedness different in core clarity?
Well, and again, one of the things about the domains that you're mentioning, it is a relating talent, a relationship building talent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Connectedness is not just about relationships. That is a portion of it. But connectedness in its glory, if you will, in its base elemental form, is all about the fact that we see everything and everyone as connected.
Right.
It's not just about the people, though. It is about every single thing out there is
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah.
And because we know everything is connected, we look for those connections.
Okay.
And in looking for those connections, we see things that other people don't see. And that's the beauty of connectedness, is that we can hold two very different ideas at the same time,
Yeah.
because the ambiguity of that, we can see the underlying connections where other people go, wait a minute, those are entirely opposite each other. You can't hold both of those beliefs at the same time. And we're
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, you
Yeah,
can,
you can.
because they both exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we do look for connections with other things. And some people don't even consider this a talent. In fact, there are some people that would deny that this even exists. There
Mm.
is a spiritual component to connectedness, but there is also what I call a practical, and I let me put the air quotes
The
around
air quotes
practical.
practical.
Yes, around this one,
Yeah.
because we see when we have frameworks, we can see how things stack up and how they work and how they're connected
Yeah.
from a not just a 3D, but a 4D perspective, because it changes over time.
Yeah.
And that dynamic is something that is very familiar to us and very comfortable for us to
Yeah.
understand.
I'm having a
Other
Shrek.
people
I'm
don't see
having a
it.
Shrek and Donkey moment right now where they're walking through the field, and he said, "I'm more like an onion," and you peel back the layers.
This is very, very true. And
Yeah.
Shrek, well, look at the green on top of it, but
Yeah. Right. Okay. So
that was well done.
another one that's different is communication. So you have that as a
Yes.
blue relational, whereas in Gallup that is an orange influencing trait.
Well, and you bring up the colors. We have had these colors since 2004 when I
Okay.
first put the colors to the side. Gallup came up with colors in 2012, and then just a few years ago, they changed them to, unfortunately, and very unfortunately, they're using our colors now. So they
Oh,
co-opted the colors.
okay.
The green and the blues are sort of the same in that the greens for them are the what are they called? Strategic thinking, I believe.
Strategic. So there is execution is purple or the
That
magenta.
which
Uh
is orange is it's like the energize, sort of like the energize,
right.
except 12 talents switch from the categories that they're in to those domains.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there's a big difference when you look at dis, the distribution,
Hmm.
because in Gallup you'll have either what is it, eight on two of them, nine and nine for the others,
Okay.
and so
Distributed.
they're even very evenly distributed,
Mm,
which is because they use factor analysis to get to it. So that determines how it's going
right.
to fall. But from the side of the categories, I look at this as this is how a person sees themselves. This is how a person experiences their own talents.
Mm,
Now, the expression of those talents from the outside looking in will look very different to other people. For instance, one of the big ones that switches categories is responsibility. Responsibility changes from a relating talent or a connect talent in our world to an energized talent,
energized
or what
talent.
they would
Mhm.
call an execution talent. Well, from the outside
Actually,
looking
that
at,
would be influencer. Uh, uh,
well, not orange. There's our magenta. Remember,
oh,
my orange
gotcha.
is their magenta. Their magenta is
I
my
see.
orange, sort
Okay,
of.
got it.
Yeah.
All right, all right.
So it is
Thanks for
very
clarifying.
confusing. Yeah, it is very confusing.
Sure.
But it becomes an executing talent, which is because from the outside looking in, it looks like they get a lot done. They do get a lot done. But the basis for getting all of that done is not because they're like an achiever who just has that internal fire and that internal drive to get things
Mhm.
done. It's because they made a promise to somebody else and they're going to follow through on that promise. And they like to take on responsibilities. So in a work environment, you will find that the responsibilities are the ones that are raising their hand saying, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. And the manager's going, oh, thank goodness, because I don't have to check up on him.
Yeah,
I know that if I give it to that person, he's going to get it done or
for
she's
sure.
going to get it done. And I
Yeah,
don't have to worry about managing it.
right.
So from the outside looking in, it looks like they get a lot done because they do. The difference is, and it makes responsibility look like the achiever talent, except maybe they don't have the lists as much as the achievers do, but the responsibilities know they made their promises and that they will follow through on the word. And even if they can't follow through on that word, that promise that they've made, oh my goodness. And even if it's not their fault that they can't follow through,
Hmm.
they try to make it up to the person over and over and over again.
Oh,
That's, there's a residual guilt that goes along without being
oh
able
yeah.
to get those things done.
Yeah.
So what the hallmark and the big difference is the responsibility person will take care of everyone else
Yeah.
first and themselves last.
Mm,
An
mm.
achiever, oh, it's on the list. I have to exercise. Oh, it's on the list. I need to do this. Oh,
Oh,
it's on the list. I'm going to do that. The
yeah,
responsibility are looking at, I promised that I would do this. I have to finish this before I can even think about taking care of exercising or doing something else that I want to do.
gotcha, gotcha.
So, and adaptability switches from being an energized talent in our world to a relating talent in the Gallup world. So it would look blue in our grouping here, but adaptability is not about the relationships. It looks like it from the outside because adaptability, one of the hallmarks of adaptability is they can change what they're doing in an instant.
Yeah.
They also, if you call them up and say, hey, I'm going to be in town in 3 weeks, do you want to go to lunch? And they're famous at saying, why don't you call me the day before you get here and let's check in then, because they don't like making a commitment, especially that far out, because something better may come up. Something else might have to happen. And so, it's one of those pieces of the adaptability, liking to have a whole lot of things going on at the same time, but they live in the moment. They live in the now.
Yeah.
For them, there are two times. There's now and there's not now. And so let's wait until it's a lot closer and then we can make those plans. But now you're going out to lunch with your adaptability friend and you say, okay, so where do you want to eat? And they go, that's a great question. I don't know. What do you feel like? They deflect it back to you because they don't want to make a commitment. So you say, oh, you know what? I was thinking I want a hamburger. And they go, oh, hamburger sounds great. And you're thinking, oh, he's just like I am. Well, he likes hamburgers too. And so we say, okay, so where do we meet? Where should we go? Well, I don't know. What kind of hamburgers do you like? Well, I've heard about this one. Why don't we go there? Oh, the adaptability person says, great. Yes, somebody else made the decision. Somebody else made the commitment. Hallelujah. I am happy.
I'm
And
in.
the blue person is like, or the other person's like, oh my gosh, he likes the exact same things I like. So it creates a bond
Mm,
between the two, but it's a one-way bond. It is not about relating to that person. That is not the intrinsic motivator for the adaptability to do what they're doing.
I
The
see.
intrinsic motivator is, I like to have a lot of things going on at the same time, and I really don't want to make a decision unless I'm forced to do so.
Right.
And so it
So it makes
looks.
So it kind of looks like there is a bond, but one person is taking on the responsibility. The other adaptability person is off the hook, so that if the restaurant stinks, well, you made the decision. I just went along with it.
Oh, they'd say, well, next time we'll choose something else. I
Okay,
mean, they'll
no,
make the best of the moment
sure,
and
sure.
go on. But
That's
so
awesome.
so when you look at them and you look at the 12 that change categories, like
Mhm.
communication looks like our mobilize from the outside looking in, but it is about the connections that the people that are telling the stories make to other people.
That's
It
true.
is more of a one-way communication from a standpoint of you may not know how your stories impact other people,
Mm,
but you're in it to connect people to the information that you have
right,
and show them, why it matters so
right.
much.
And I often wondered about that because communication comes up in the orange in the Gallup world, and so it looks like it's a influencing trait, though it does influence, but it is about connecting with in a relational perspective. So
It's the time. That
yeah,
long that it's for that over time period because people remember your stories.
they do. That's
Yeah,
true. Well, and we're, innately built and designed for stories. I mean, you look at the history of the world and it's oral tradition, it's storytelling, it's campfire, conversations before Netflix and all that other, stuff, and before even public television, whatever it is, however television came about, and the media, we were always telling stories, right? Cave drawings, storytelling around the campfire, all that. To me, it's so intuitive to me, and others, they're like, no, I don't want to talk. I don't want to stand up in front of a crowd. I don't want to tell a story. But yeah, to me, it's all about this. It's about communication. It's about the engagement. And unfortunately, it's, Gallup. I love Gallup's work. I mean, I love what they've done, the Clifton Strengths. But unfortunately, it feels, though, like you just said, it's an influencing trait, where to me communication is about not just the influencing, it's about the also the feedback. It's the dialogue, not just a monologue, right?
hmm
Yeah,
yeah. And it is a long-term connection over time because people do remember the stories. And whether or not you remember them, depending on how the audience came to you, they will remember you and they will feel connected to you.
right. Yeah, that's true.
So,
I remember years ago I met with an author, and he's from Florida, and when we talked, it was about a 15-minute conversation, and into the conversation, and he, as we um, continued on through the meal, he just looked at me, he said, Vin, I feel like I've known you for such a long time. Like, what is that? He said, this is so rare. He goes, I don't ever run into this. And I didn't have a language back then to tell him what it was, but it's natural. It's a part. So that connectedness, that spiritual side, that communication, working with the connectedness, because the connectedness is my number one, and then communication is my number five, and sandwiched in between there is the input learner ideation, or yeah, input learner ideation. So I'm always thinking about relationships, and I'm always thinking about communicating.
you can't help it, right?
No.
This is your autopilot. This is
Yep.
what you do without thinking about doing it. And that's one of the things that I love about the language. I mean, Gallup, I believe that this is probably one of the most important um, inventions, if you will, one of the most important gifts to humanity, at
Oh yeah.
least at least since Gutenberg's press. I mean, because I'm a book person. You are too. Input
Yeah.
learners. We both share those two talents. We collect books,
Yeah.
and I this is probably one of the greatest gifts mankind has had in a long time, and it's new. I mean, it's relatively new on the grand scale of things, and I know that things will improve as we go further in time, but this is the closest we've ever gotten to really getting to the elemental building blocks of a person's strengths. Now, one of the things that we differ in too is I don't call these strengths, I call them talents,
Mm,
because a talent, that's the elemental building block of your strengths. And
mm,
you add skills, you add knowledge, you add experience to it, and then that takes it to the strength level. Some people haven't developed their talents. Some
right.
people even deny that they have certain talents.
It's
But
true. It's true. And actually, my 23-year-old daughter, her name is Joelle, so I'll call her out by her name. So Joelle, she took the assessment, and when she saw it, she said, "No, I don't believe that." But 2 months later, she called me back. She said, "I think you're right. I've thought it through. So now how do I do this?" And what was great was I turned her on to Brandy's software, the Strengthology, and gave her the action plan. I said, "Now start working it." And it's so great because both, two of my daughters, one's just done her freshman work at ACU. She took the strengths through ACU, and then my other daughter is going to trade school, and they both look at that and they have both made decisions based upon that. And you know what's fascinating? It has worked out for them in incredible ways. And I'm going, man, where was this 35 years ago? You
yeah.
know?
Oh, or 55 years ago. I mean, just,
Yeah,
this information is it's beautiful in that it is so accurate and it speaks to a part of us that didn't have a language to be able to describe what it is we do. Because how do you describe how you think or how you feel or how you act or why you act?
right,
We'd have to, you can't have, it's like a fish describing water. You're
right.
in it all the time. You have no language for this because
Yeah,
it's just such a part of who you are.
yeah,
And that's one of the pieces. And when you talked about the pillars, I thought, yes, people come first. Understanding people, understanding who they are, how they are, and why they do what they do. It's important for them to understand that for themselves first, because then they can be authentic and step into
sure.
their own leader role, if you will, because we're
Yeah,
all leaders.
yeah,
Sometimes we don't necessarily lead ourselves into this direction because we don't know. We don't have this information.
right.
But having it gives us it's not that it gives us a narrower path on which to go. It shows us where the paths are that we can go on more effortlessly than
Right.
others.
It's a
And
it's a it's a lamp. It's a lamp in the hand, right?
yeah,
In a dark place, it's a lamp
yeah,
in the hand that guides you down the path so that you don't trip over the big rock.
yeah. Well, there's that piece of it. And it's also from a standpoint of the input learner that you and I both share. Being in an area where you do research and being in an area where you have not just the breadth of subjects to deal with, but the depth
Yes.
of
Yeah.
each one of them is important for us. If
Yeah.
neither one of us would be good in a call center with a script, but
Oh,
there are
I've
people
done
that
that.
would love that.
Oh, I've done it. I've done it.
Ah,
And in fact, I will say this, it working in the call center was so redundant and so repetitive, but what it did is it refined my speaking skills. But after 2 years of doing that, I wanted to commit suicide.
yeah, yeah,
uh, but what I did do is I did change a call center culture. I've actually started them up and trained them and created initiatives around it. and helped other people who were totally great with the repetitive and redundancy. But I created a culture in which I did team building and I developed them, and I loved it. It was so fun, you know.
Well, being able to find the right places for the right people at the right time, and knowing that this is going to feed them,
Yeah.
because when we use our talents, we get energy. It's almost that like the perpetual motion machine that just keeps feeding you and feeding you.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like it to get into that flow state. As Mike Csikszentmihalyi talked about, when you get into flow, time just disappears, and
Mm.
all physical functions cease to have needs anymore, and you just flow. I mean, it was a good word to use.
I think there's a statement to that. It goes something to the effect of, um, if it doesn't feel like work, or if you're enjoying it, then it's not. Then it's not
Yeah,
work. But you're doing work. You're just enjoying it as if it were your hobby, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm not a fly fisherman, but boy, if I did, I mean, if I was a professional fly fisherman, I'd be out there every day, right? Doing the fly fishing. Or but I'm a writer, a speaker, a communicator. I'm a musician, and I could sit there for hours and hours and hours and create music. Some would look at me and say, "What a absolute waste of time," and I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me?"
Oh, it's interesting when Marcus Buckingham was working with Don Clifton on this, and they came up with the definitions of strength. It's
Yeah,
that consistent, near perfect performance in an activity.
yeah,
The thing that I added to that definition, we made one change, and it's at the very end of it. For us, a strength is that consistent, near perfect performance in an activity you love doing,
yeah,
because there are so many things out there that we can perfect and become very good at doing. But if we hate it, it's not a strength. I mean,
absolutely.
it drains our energy. I mean, this is why you get sick
Yeah.
when you are doing things that, wanted to commit suicide. I understand that feeling. I totally understand that feeling
I would
after
never
trying
do
to be,
that. That's just my little
no,
disclaimer, but it felt like it. It was internally like, oh, this is miserable.
well, I mean, you've done basically career suicide by going into a job that didn't feed the talents that you have
Sure.
for as long as you were in it. Now, the
Yeah.
communication, I agree, that is a wonderful place to go in and to perfect the words, and you get comfortable with talking, having a spiel to start off with, and then being able to divert from that
Yeah.
and come up with the stories and talk about things in a different way.
Yeah.
That could be great, but it can only take you so far.
Yeah. And it was
And
it was funny though, because that was actually my first exposure to consulting CEOs and executives, because I had to cold call them, get through the gatekeeper, and then sell them on a plan for something that, well, at the time, I believe they absolutely needed, and they do. And I still think they do. American Express makes a lot of money doing it, but um, but it was business, the corporate Amex, and Amex actually had a great training program. They taught me how to speak and how to listen, and but innately and intuitively, I was able to break the barriers very quickly, and then engage and speak to CEOs and executives. And I did it through storytelling. And I was hitting in the top 1 to 10%, depending on any given month or week. And it was awesome because everybody was like, how do you do that? And then they put me on projects where I could strategically figure out where I didn't have to make the cold calls anymore. I could go in and find gaps and problems and then fix it and help people do their job better. And that was great, you know?
mm,
Yeah.
bridging the gaps. And see, in our world, you are a bridgeoneer because you bridge the gaps between people and information. So you found that point of flow in
Yeah.
that particular area at that time.
Yeah.
but the learner needs to continue to learn. So once you perfect it to a certain degree,
Yeah.
and there's no learning going on for you, we start to get disengaged and
I,
we
I
check out.
I'm actually at the end of my master's. I'm in the last two classes this summer. August, I will be graduated. And I'm already looking ahead going, once school's done, what is there? Oh my gosh. Do I go on for the doctorate? You know, and and I'm getting married this year, right? And so she's like, well, hon, can you just take a break from learning for a little while and can we
Learn something, some other things.
right, yes, no. So you're right. I do love to learn the reading, the input, all of it, the ideation. So yeah, there's a whole lot of green going on for sure.
Yeah. And for some people that have discipline or consistency or talents that, maybe input learner, those two are in their bottom five, even. They don't get it. They don't understand us. And a
Mhm.
lot of times they want us to go in and learn what we need to learn and then just do it over and over and over again. And that's not the place for learners. Learners need to be on that bleeding edge where there's new technology coming out or new information coming out all the time so
Yeah,
that they can continually learn. Because
right.
otherwise we get bored and we check out.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, you just nailed me. Wow. And I didn't even have to pay for the psychiatric treatment. That's amazing.
I think that we'd have a lot less problems if people had this information earlier on and understood it and they could so that they could utilize it and make decisions based on who they really are at their core. I really do.
Making informed decisions, right?
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. This is all, folks, this is really about knowing yourself, as Candace pointed out, making an informed decision in the direction. And I'll tell you what, Candace, my daughter, who's now 19, we had this conversation just the other day again, since we had that conversation on Tuesday. And because she is realizing like her path is a little bit different than what she thought when she was 16. And it's really cool because she's able to now say, I'm more like this, not like this. And she can pivot. And as she's growing into that strength, and she's really um so she's growing so much with this information. And I look back and I go, wow. I mean, I wish I had this when I was 18, 19 years old, or even 15 years old. It would have made
Yeah.
such a difference, you
Oh,
know.
I agree. We have something in the organization, we call it No Grow Show, where know what your talents are, grow in those areas of your talents, and
Mhm.
show them on a daily basis.
Yeah,
So, how can you do that and be authentic to who you are if you don't even have this information?
right.
If you don't know what drives you from the inside out?
Yeah,
I, I just, I'm constantly amazed at
yeah,
how every single day I learn something new about this
yeah.
because there's so much to learn.
It continue. We're very deep, right? The roots go really deep, and it's so in way past the basement. I mean, it is so way past the basement. Human behavior is just so complex. It's just fascinating. Um, so in an organization, when you have, because you help not just individuals, but you help organizations. A lot of the times you run into leadership and managers. This is something that has come up a lot on this podcast. Is this just fluffy psychology? And I've actually had what I call a organizational mindset focused on people who are focused on operations actually tell me this is just fluffy psychology.
If they haven't taken the assessment yet, I can understand where they're coming from. But once a person takes it and then does a little bit of inquiry into it,
Yeah.
that's where they start to go, oh,
Yeah.
I've even had a mother have, she had me talk to her son who was in college at the time. We were on the phone, three-way phone call, and I asked the mother, I said, do you want me to use the coach approach and ask him questions and pull it out of him? Or do you just want me to go through, talk about his five talents, what the amalgamated looks like so that he can understand it? She said, just go through, tell him what it looks like so that he can get it. Cause I know he's in between classes and he's, pushed for time. So
Sure.
I started up, went through a couple of talents, and all of a sudden the son goes, Mom, you didn't tell me you hired a psychic. And I thought, oh, gee.
That's
I mean,
funny.
when people take the assessment and they are, they answer the questions according to how they feel instead of how they think somebody wants them to
That's
answer
right.
them. We've had that happen a few
Mhm.
times, not very often. It's
Sure.
hard to game this one. You can game it the second or third time around,
Yeah.
but it's hard to game it the first time. But
Yeah.
when they take it and they see these, one of the responses we might get is, "Ugh, I got all the boring talents." Well, here's the thing about the talents. You have these particular talents. There are more than 33 million sets of responses when we take the order into account. And they are you. This is who you are at your core, and this is familiar to you. This is common to you.
Right.
So what happens is some of them think, yeah, I got the boring ones.
Put that into
Well,
perspective. That, folks, 33 million in the top five. Okay.
yeah.
Folks, this is more than all of the population of the state of Texas. That means there's nobody like you in the state of Texas. And if you
Well,
live
and it's
out
a
and if you live outside of the state of Texas, we don't really care. No, I'm just kidding. We do care.
well, this is approximately the population of Canada.
Yeah.
So that means there's one of you walking around if you were in Canada, just one.
Mm,
That's it.
yeah.
Statistically, it doesn't fall that way because some talents, they're only 4% of the population get it. Some, the highest is 34% at this time, at
Mm,
this point, that of people that get one particular talent. So
okay.
it's not exactly
It's not a
going to
it's not a
be
one
that
to one.
way, but statistics can show you, at least,
Right.
it's the population of Canada.
Yeah.
And so you're it for you.
Yeah.
That's it. What are
Yeah.
you going to do with the you got?
Yeah.
But you also look at it, and even when you meet someone who has the same talents that you have, and I have one talent twin that I have found that has my same talents, but they're in a different order. He is male, I am female. That's a difference. That matters. Those differences, your experiences, they're, are you an only child? Or are you one of six or 10 or 12? I
Right.
mean, all of these different things matter. Where did you grow up? What is your language of origin?
Wow.
Um, all of these different things create this unique you that you are.
Sure.
And nobody else is ever going to be able to understand who you are. In fact, I call it authority. What people need to do is become what I call an authority of one, because it's one or none.
Right.
You are never going to be an authority on who another person is.
Sure.
And no one is ever going to understand you as well as you understand yourself.
Right.
So to be an authority of one, it's really understanding, having that clarity of who you are at your core,
Right.
being honest with yourself and saying, oh yeah, that gets me in trouble. Let's look at both sides of these talents. There are good sides and there are negative sides. The talents themselves are neutral. It's
Yeah.
how do we utilize them? How do we apply them that can make them go one way or the other?
Yeah.
But then the third step is intentionality.
Right.
What am I going to do to intentionally use this talent to support where I want to go?
Mm,
And when people have that, what I wrap up under the term chi, because clarity of core, honesty with self, intentionality.
Mm,
Chi is the energy of the universe in Eastern philosophies, but I don't use it for that. But it does also talk about energy from a standpoint of where do you get your energy?
right.
And are you using that wisely?
Right. Yeah.
And
I mean,
some people block it.
I can look at mine and I think I'm like 52% extroverted and or maybe is it 57? I'm not sure. Some people feel that I'm 57% extroverted, but
Or
I
99 sometimes.
probably sometimes 99%. But yeah, I think it's pretty well balanced. It's like 52% and 48% introverted. These different tests will come up with different things. The big five will tell me that I'm introverted, and I'm not. I mean, I am. When I'm alone, I'm very comfortable in my skin and I'm happy to think, but I'm also very happy to be with people, you
Yeah.
know.
With me, I jump back and forth between the cave that I love so much,
Sure.
so I can do all this thinking and gather this information and make these connections, and then all of a sudden I get this feeling that, oh, I need to get out there and talk to somebody. So I jump into
Sure.
a extremely extroverted role. And I live in that for a while until my energy starts to drain there, and then I'll jump back to the cave.
Yeah.
And that, from the outside looking in, it looks very disjointed for some people. It looks very disparate.
Hmm.
I get excited when I talk about this stuff. If I'm
Yeah.
doing a facilitation and it's not over core clarity, which I don't do those anymore,
Uh,
but when I'm doing it because I have been asked to do it, I
sure.
will do it. And until I start talking about the talents, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that you had a personality. This is not a personality assessment. This is an inventory. This is
Sure.
an inventory of the talents that you do. What are the naturally recurring patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that can be productively applied? That's what Don Clifton was looking for. He was looking for the things that can be productively applied in a business world. And that's what they were looking for. This is not about personalities.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, oh, it's just another personality test. And it's not a
No.
test, it's an assessment because
Yeah.
it gives you this inventory. And
Right.
it really gets down to the synaptic connections in your brain.
It's
What is going
it's
on
amazing.
up
It
here?
really drills. I love this. It drills so deep into not just some people say, well, that's your personality assessment that you use. And yeah. So there's like 250 of them out there and they're all the same. And I have told people over and over again, this is not a personality assessment because and nothing against Myers-Briggs. I love Myers-Briggs. I actually, I think I think it's helpful as a framework. I don't think it's deep enough. I don't think it goes deep enough into the personality of a person, right? Um, and they call it 16 personalities, but this goes into who you are. This is the core of who you are. And because there's so many different people in the world, there's almost 9 billion people on the planet. Not a one of us would have, I think according to Brandy's numbers, not a one of us on this planet right now would share the same 34 in order.
Oh, no. Statistically, it's impossible.
Fascinating.
So, yeah, it
Fascinating.
is. And then again, all the different things, the skills, the knowledge, the experiences you've had, the background that you have, all
Yeah.
of that goes in to create the unique you are. So I don't know why anyone would not want to know this information, but there are some that don't.
Well, and I think you brought up the point earlier that some people go, well, I've got the boring ones, right?
Yeah.
I know that like I love the fact that, connectedness is at my top. And I love the order and then I think about when I get to strategic, I go, oh, I love that it's, right after my communication, it's like number 6. It's right there because they help. The strategic helps what do you call that? You accelerate, it accelerates, or it's a catalyst.
It could be a catalyst. It depends. Some people don't develop their talents that deep.
Okay. Okay.
Some do. You
Yeah.
definitely have been able to take it and help. I mean, it's useful for you.
Yeah.
Some people don't go that way.
Yeah. Well,
It's just
I've seen people who have used it, and I've seen them change, including my own daughters. And I have seen people take it and they go, meh, you know, it doesn't, it that whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, it really does matter. Do you want to be the best version of you or not? It all depends on how they
it's,
feel about themselves, right?
it does. And some people don't want to look that deep. We find that the people that mainly have the external talents would rather have the spotlight on other people, not on themselves.
Mm,
We find that there are certain talents that do not want to share certain information because they're very private.
mm,
And in fact, if you get deliberative and intellection together, it's kind of a double whammy of, yeah, I took the assessment. I'm not sharing my results with you.
oh,
Um, some people have been burned and, by assessments in the past and either pigeonholed in a certain area. The way we look at it is what we're doing is we're helping to give people not just, I mean, the language comes,
mhm,
Gallup has just done a stupendous job
yeah,
in getting this language together and pulling it so that people understand what it is. We like to take it to a different level
mhm,
to help people understand what's the amalgamation of the top five. How do they affect each other? Because how they affect each other matters.
yeah,
But we also like with those top five having what we call the core drills, drilling to the core of your top five. What do
sure,
those top five tell us? Like
yeah,
you're a Bridgeneer, I'm a thought rocket.
yeah,
Um, some people have talents in all four categories. 20% of the population will get talents in all four categories. And we call them stabilizers. And they're kind of like universal blood. They can go anywhere. These are the
yeah.
people that can pretty much do anything they put their minds to it.
That's amazing.
We might be able to do what we put our minds to, but we might not like it. And it'll wear us out over time
Sure.
because if it doesn't align with the talents that we have, you're not going to get energy from it.
It's true. It'll actually drain you.
Yeah.
I have experimented with a lot of things. In with that, I mean, in careers. In fact, I think Chris said to me, Chris is the producer, by the way. Chris said to me, he said, "Man, every time I meet you, I learn something new about something that you've done in your past." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm an experimental guy. I always try new things."
Mhm.
But I've learned to now not experiment so much, but when I find the thing that I really love, I'm really investing, jump in with both feet in. And it has to be something that I say, yeah, I can do this for the rest of my life. This is something that I really want to do. And it's fascinating because the um this part of it, the training, the culture strategy, I had to really take time and think about the branding, right? Just like you did with the core clarity. Um, is this something that I could see doing myself for the rest of my life? The culture strategy, connecting with people and bridging the gaps, right? And it's like, yeah, here I am doing this very thing. I love this stuff. And it's really it's really neat because I get emails and calls from people that are former coworkers of mine or friends, and they're like, I'm watching what you're doing and I can't wait. I'm so excited. Like, where's this going to go? And that energizes me even more because I'm like, oh, all right. So it's grabbing folks right where they live. It's good.
Wait a minute. So your communication is connecting with other people?
My communication is connecting with other people. And I somehow I
And
do
that
that through
gives you
input learning and
energy.
ideation.
And to some extent, the connectedness too.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, for me, the learner doesn't get bored because
Mm-mm.
there are over 33 million potential combinations. Every time I talk to a person, I learn something new.
Yeah.
I can watch a movie and go, there's that talent. Oh, there's that one. You know what? Definitely got to be a
Right.
stabilizer, because look at how they're juggling all these things and they're into all these different areas and filling
Sure.
these gaps for people.
Yeah.
And this isn't going to look well. What's going to happen is they're going to leave and nobody's going to be there to pick up the pieces.
Yeah. Well,
And that's what happens.
I had shared my resume with two different people. And it was so fascinating. One was a consultant and the other woman was a consultant. So the man was a consultant, she was a consultant, and I shared with two different people and they looked at my resume from a different angle, right? And the gentleman said, "Vin, so what are you going to do when you grow up?" And I just started laughing. I'm like, "Please don't misinterpret what I've done as being kind of a wayward, just sort of Pollyanna about life." All of that was very strategic. And oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. And then the other woman, she looked at it and she said, "Well, you're a Renaissance man." And I said, "That's right. That's it." She picked the perfect word. I went, "That's really fascinating." But yeah, the Bridgeneer Renaissance, it's that learner connectedness, input, ideation, all that. It's all about finding ways to make things happen and connect people and ideas. It
Yeah.
all works together for me. Yeah.
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 And you bring up a good point. With these talents, some talents just rub on other talents. I mean, they're just can be so opposite. We were talking about adaptability earlier. Take
Mhm.
somebody with focus who is focused in on a target and basically just hones right into that one thing and would never dream of having, 15 different things going on at the same time, because a focused person, that's not how they operate
Oh
at
yeah.
all. So if we have a focus person describe an adaptability, or an adaptability describe a focus, they're going to come up with different names for those talents because of where they come in. And some of these names aren't always so nice,
No.
but yeah. And so where is the locus of control for the individual?
Mm,
Do you have, is it an internal locus of control where um, they have command, if you will, of that piece of their psyche, or is it an
mm,
external focus and where they're dependent on other people
sure.
to create the image or the give them the definition of who they are? And so one of my goals is to be able to have people understand themselves so well that when the right thing comes along, the right opportunity is there, they jump on it and say, I'm the person for this job. Let me tell you why, or let me show you why. Or somebody brings them an offer that has a lot of money involved with it and a lot of prestige and all, and they look at it and say, you know what, I would not be the right person for that position. I'm going to have to
Right.
pass. To be
Mhm.
able to stand up and say that at any age during a career would save an awful lot of grief, an awful lot of therapist bills, and an awful lot of medication,
Yeah.
whether self-medicated.
Or self-medicating.
Yeah, yeah, whether self or otherwise. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would, we take on things that people tell us as truth that is
Mhm.
not really our truth. So I have a saying that I talk about. I say there are universal truths and there are you truths.
Mm,
Take care not to mistake one for the other,
right.
because when other people come in with some of these comments,
Yeah.
typically they're speaking from their point of view. They're
From the,
speaking from their talent
sure.
perspective,
Yeah. Well, and
and
that's
we
why I
take
had
it
to
on.
stand up for myself. I had to say, "Oh, please don't mistake that. Please, you're misunderstanding me." And that piece of paper, that document that you see, doesn't tell the whole story. It's only telling you a portion of the story of what I can do, right?
Yeah,
Or what I've done, but I have so much more.
yeah,
I'm like a magician, and I've got another card up my sleeve, right? So,
yep.
and
And you
so
can
do
learn
you.
anything you need to.
That's right. If I
I
have
mean,
to, if I want to. Yeah.
There's the key, isn't it?
Except, except, well, I won't go there, but except for, I'm not a computer programmer. I'm not that.
A little bit too detail oriented.
For
Input and
sure.
strategic together can look like analytical,
Hmm.
but it's not analytical. It is detail focused on things that interest us.
Yeah.
With my having the strategic up there, yours at number 6, those two combined can look very much like analytical at times, but it's not anything like analytical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah,
I know analytical people, and we are not the same. No.
yeah. Connectedness, input, learner, ideation, none of those have the detail necessarily components
Right.
until you start adding them to different things and looking at it. But
Sure.
yeah, things you're interested in, yeah,
Right.
you'll go deep.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In fact, some conversations I will have with different people, and we'll start talking. I can go deep quick. Like, I'm like one of those submarines that just goes immediately,
Yeah.
and I don't care who I'm with. And it's so funny because I had one guy say to me, goes, "Yeah, that's too deep for me. I can't go there." I went, "What?" You know, and so like you had told me the other day, yeah, when I started realizing that other people don't share the same view or talents,
Or
I
bandwidth.
or bandwidth, right? Yeah, yeah.
They
So
don't,
I'm very cognizant of that now. I
yeah,
wasn't back then. I was in my early 20s.
yeah. Oh, I still get into that trap where my input learner. I mean, what I was talking about the other day for those that weren't privy to that conversation
Sure.
is an input or a learner has a wide bandwidth of information they can take. So if there is a fire hose of information coming at either one of them, they've got their arms up, they're going, yeah, bring it on. And they
Right.
can handle that flow of that massive flow of information. When
That's
you
right.
have input and learner, it's a double whammy. And basically what's happening is that fire hose of information is coming at us. We have our mouths open and we're dancing because it's really hard to satiate an input learner and
Mm.
over give them too much. But because of that, we think other people have that same capacity of bandwidth because this is the only bandwidth we know.
Yeah.
So we turn around and spit out everything and
Yeah.
they drown in it. I mean,
Yeah.
they some of them can't handle it.
So
So,
you brought up an interesting point about that. So there's the nature side of this, and then there's the nurture side. So that would be a psychological perspective, right? So I have a grandfather who's now passed on, but I remember one time sitting with my family at my father's funeral in 2008, and we were sitting down talking, going through pictures, laughing, having a good time. And I started bringing some things up, and my aunts all looked at me and they said, "Oh my gosh, you're just like my dad." And I went, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, your grandpa talked just like you, thought just like you, sold just like you. Like you're always selling something, some idea." And I didn't even have a relationship with my grandfather. And so
wow.
the question is that something that's genetically passed down, or is it something that's a little bit of both nature and nurture from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, the talents, it's interesting because I have my entire family of origin, parents and um, my 3 siblings, talents. So I can look at just this generation, this intact family unit, if you will.
Yeah.
And my mom has input, my dad had learner. My sisters and I all got input and learner. My brother didn't get either one of them. So, okay, so what did he get? He got my dad's achiever. He got my
Uh-huh.
mom's developer.
Mm.
So now we're looking at just a faction, if you will, of our talents
Okay.
that may look like somebody else's or may not. Again, depending on who you're around and what their perspective is.
Yeah.
So if it's something that's unusual for them and they can pick it out, it could very well be that your grandfather had your input and learner. So the wide bandwidth and the communication where you take all that information, swirl it around, come back with stories that tie it all together, connectedness, if
Yeah.
he had connectedness too, and
Yeah.
that spiritual component. I mean, it can very much look like it. And so I think there are familial pass downs,
Mm,
but I got woo. I'm the only one in my family except my niece who has woo in our
mm.
top, and even in our top 10.
Oh,
So we both have it in our top five.
wow.
So I see this as there's probably a genetic component to it, but you know, how get into Judith's work on nature versus nurture, you
Mhm.
know, which is which, right?
Right.
And it goes between 65 to 55% nature to 45 to 35% nurture.
Nurturer.
What is it?
Right.
I don't know. We haven't answered those questions yet. I
Yeah.
don't know that we ever will.
Well, that was just
But
you can speculate. I'm okay with
yeah,
speculation. I mean, I'm all about research and I'm all about hard numbers. And I think, but at the same time, there's times where you just speculate and you go, my best guess, my best educated guess is possibly this. Yeah.
so it's interesting from a standpoint of I think I mean when we look at my family of origin, my dad
Mhm.
was military. We moved all over the world growing up.
Mhm.
And when we look at six people, we have six different core drills, and we have only two people that have one blue talent. My mother has harmony. My sister had responsibility.
Oh,
No, of the seven blue talents, there were no other blue talents. My
wow.
sister with responsibility married an Italian with three blue talents. He had more blue talents in his his top five than we had in our entire family. Now, from a standpoint of, you know, this was, we were all born of these two people, and it worked well for us. And
Yeah,
we were our own intact team, if you will, moving all around the world.
sure.
And it worked very well for us. So the lifestyle was great. My responsibility sister, it felt like we were pulling roots up every time we moved.
Mm,
And that was difficult for her.
sure.
My woo thought and my learner were like, this is great. I
Let's
get,
do it.
start a new school, new people.
Yeah, you're just feeding the
Yeah,
beast.
let's go. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. So, it's
Yeah,
hard to say, but I do think that there is something to the nature side of it. I really
sure.
do.
Yeah,
But don't have enough information and time to be able to go in and dig any deeper
right,
than
right.
I have.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before Candace, we've been at this. Well,
Oh, way
man,
too
it's
long
it's
and not
3:30
long enough.
and not long
Yeah.
enough. But so I would like to clarify, folks. Candace, specifically to you, I would love to have you back on at some point. This is first season, and your dynamic product and personality and insight into human nature and conversational style is awesome. So for that, thank you so
Thank you.
much for joining me. It's such a privilege and an honor to have you here. But the other thing that I would like to do and give you the heads up is next season we're going to talk about leadership specifically. So we got to talk about the core clarity and the Gallup strengths or the Clifton strengths and all how all that works. But next time, love to really delve deep into how leadership, specifically leadership, because they are the ones who bring charge to the organization that impacts culture and helps people either be really, really successful in their jobs and happy, or it makes them absolutely successful and miserable. And I don't like the latter one. I prefer the first one, building people up and helping them be happy. Um, So if you wouldn't mind, I know we can talk offline on this, but love to have you back and talk about the 5 pillars of leadership and
I would love to.
and how the core clarity can help other organizations. But before we go, would you go ahead and let people know, because this is not just about the culture strategy and my business and service. This is about helping get your message out too. How can people reach you and have at her? Go ahead.
Well, we have a website, coreclarity.net, and you can go on to that site, and there is a place for information on how do I take the assessment if I haven't taken it before. If I've taken it before, should I take it again? I took it, I don't have my results. I mean, all of these things are under our about side. There is also a place in there where you can enter your information in and get a pyramid chart
Yeah.
to get you started on understanding what your talents are.
Right.
So again, www.coreclarity.net, and you can get to that point
All right.
anytime you
Awesome.
want to.
Awesome. And then who do you serve out there? I know you serve individuals, but do you also serve
Oh,
businesses?
oh, very much so. The ones I can mention, we have one of the big four accounting firms. Can't mention their name. That we've been working with since 2005.
Oh, nice.
Since we incorporated. The FAA uses our information internally, and we train facilitators to do programs in their companies. So
Nice.
they or individual facilitators to go in and work with other companies.
So let's say I wanted to come in and get trained through Core Clarity. So I could come and be a part of what you're doing. And do you have classes? Are they online? Are they in person? How does that work?
So we have something called FQI, which is Facilitator Qualification Intensives. There's
Mhm.
information on our website where if you look under the Facilitator tab, you'll see the certification
Okay.
piece. And they're week-long, fully immersive, um, in-person classes that start out with a virtual component to
Okay.
get the personal discovery part done
Nice.
initially. So it's intense, and I don't recommend somebody just picking up from wherever they are and trying to start a business doing something like that. Typically, facilitators that are already doing work like this or people in L&D departments at organizations are the ones that we train to
Oh,
bring
nice.
this in.
Nice. So
Yeah.
there's a human resources aspect and corporate trainers. And
Yeah.
you
We
you
do
work with
leadership retreats.
executives. All
I've
right. All
Yeah,
right.
I've even done a leadership retreat where it was the top leader in one part of a large organization, and he had them bring their significant others and spouses with them, and it
Wow.
was probably the most incredible time because the leaders in that organization learned about their one leader and how how he worked with them impacted his personal life
Oh,
that they didn't even know. They were able to go back and see he had intellection as a talent,
right.
but the company had an open door policy,
Right.
so he never got time alone. He never got time to think through things. And so what would happen, we found out from his wife, was he'd get home and they lived out in the country, and he'd start walking, and he would walk sometimes for 12 hours. She
Wow.
wouldn't know where he was, didn't always have phone reception. But I said, oh gosh, looking at his talents, I was able to just say, okay, so let me give people an idea of what's going on while you're walking. And so I was looking at his talents, and I picked up a talent. I said, you're walking along and you're thinking, okay, this happened last week and this happened that. Oh my goodness, these two things are connected. So what we're going to have to do is, and I mean, I showed them what was going on in his brain, and what they ended up doing was he had office hours where the door was closed for an hour every day, which reduced the time that he needed on the weekends and evenings to go in and put everything together so that he could think through it and thoroughly vet
Oh,
ideas the way. And she got her husband back.
Oh,
because he didn't have to go on these long walks anymore, just to think through what happened at work. What do I need to do? And every Monday morning, I said, what happens every Monday morning? You guys have a meeting and you get together, and he says, okay, blah, 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 blah. And he gives you all your orders and you go off for the week. And then comes Saturday, he's out walking 12 hours on a rural road somewhere, not spending time with his family
sure.
because he didn't get the time he needed every day to sit through and figure these things out.
Wow.
And it changed everything for them.
That's
So,
fantastic. Love that. Love that.
yeah. But
That's
we don't know
awesome.
what we don't know about ourselves, right?
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. That is so cool. Well, thank you so much, Candace. This has been
My
so
pleasure.
fun, and we'll bring you back if you're a willing
I'm
participant.
game.
All right, awesome. This has been great, and I know that folks, we're going to continue on with season 2. Candace is just kind of zipping the whole thing. You've been patient on the journey. We've been just kind of building and building and building, but she has brought together and just sewed everything up so tight. And we're just, yeah, I'm just pleased. And I know that this is going to be great for a lot of people who are anticipating this conversation. So this has been awesome. And if there's anything, folks, that you need from Candace, feel free to go to coreclarity.net. Is there any other way that they can reach you? Are you on
That's that's
LinkedIn
going to be the
or?
best. I am on LinkedIn.
Okay,
I so they can find me there, but I do not connect with people that I don't know. So
gotcha.
give me an information, send me a note saying, "Hey, I heard you talking to Vin," and boom,
That's it.
that
See,
that's how
I'm the
you make
key.
the
I'm the key
connections.
into core clarity now. See, I have the keys to the kingdom. Just kidding.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Candace. We're
My
gonna
pleasure.
wrap this up, give you your time back, and then we'll go ahead and get this published in short order.
Wonderful.
All right,
Take
great.
care.
Thank you so much. So before we do go offline, let me stop recording.
Welcome to Threadpool. We're an all-inclusive podcast factory. Podcast made easy. We operate with a done-for-you approach. If you have a great podcast concept, we can help make it a reality. In less than 8 weeks, we can have your amazing podcast fully produced, making you ready to share your podcast worldwide on all of the major podcast streaming platforms. Book a coaching session to see how we can work with you. We are Threadpool, revealing greatness.